Hello everybody and welcome back to the Rodea the Sky Soldier playthrough. It's time to begin World 2, at least the second level theme, with Chapter 6, Beneath the Desert Sky. Because it's a desert-themed world, which is fair enough.
If you want to tag along, it's cool.
Hey, just who do you think is gonna repair you? I'll repair that attitude of yours if you're rude again.
Whoa! Beep boop. Self-repair's complete.
Oh, well then.
But I would say it's around this point that the relationship between Rodea and Ion really does start to develop, and it's really engaging. Like, while you may get slightly annoyed by Ion's chattiness, although she's certainly nowhere near as chatty as she is in the Wii U version and the 3DS versions, both characters are really kind of interesting and fun, and it's charming. It's not perfect, but it's charming, and that is generally enough for me. Now, I would like to be able to tell you all the names of the songs in the game. Unfortunately, I can't really... I mean, I can, but it's not really entirely going to be successful, as I get slightly confused by the naming system. It's not always quite clear which song relates to which level. I believe, like, World 1's general song theme is In the Sky. Perhaps The End of This Dream. Not sure. But let it just be said that Rodea has some really, really lovely, well, not lovely, but really cool songs. Like, some of these are just excellent. They're all... well, they've all got this sort of catchy, light-hearted jauntiness to them, and it's charming. I think that is pretty much the term that I'm going to be using for this game so much.
What are these guys?
Because it is the only way, really, that I'm going to be able to deal with this effectively. But we've already been introduced here to a rather challenging enemy type. I'm not sure what these guys are called, but they are rather mean. Basically, the way to defeat them is to kind of charge at them before they kind of manage to attack you, if not to charge straight through their kind of circular beam. It's easier said than done sometimes, but oh well, we'll manage for the most part. Now, something that you are going to come across numerous times throughout Rodea is strong winds. Essentially what is going to happen is that every now and again you will be kind of blown away if you aren't kind of careful about things. And trust me, I have suffered death by wind in my first run of the game, so try and avoid it if you can, because it's rather embarrassing when it happens. Now, if there's one thing that I will definitely criticise the game for in terms of its gameplay, there's very little that I would criticise the Wii version for, but what sometimes happens when you're using the speed shoes, sometimes also when you're going through kind of loops, well, lines of rings rings? Gravitons, that's their technical name. And sometimes, when you're going through kind of the boost launches, you will sometimes end up in a situation where the camera has shifted to kind of face behind you. Now, that would be okay, were it not for the fact of that can frequently, rather irritatingly, and I mean really rather irritatingly, mean that you are facing away from the very specific direction you need to be facing to be able to progress. So theoretically the game can launch you off into your death if you are not careful and not looking around you. Thankfully the game does have sort of a reasonably slow falling speed, so if you end up in a situation like that, you pretty much always have time to rectify the situation, which is an absolute godsend if you ask me. But yes, I think sort of, if you hadn't noticed, sort of, by now you're beginning to get introduced to the kind of slightly wider open levels. You've got to look where you want to be going and kind of finding the things. Also, I think I may have just spotted a silver medal, which was located just right down there below the platform that we were on. I don't think we are going to get it because I was blind at the time, and just wanting to try and get through the game in as smooth a fashion as possible, so not really dawdling to try and get things that were really, really far out of my reach. If it required an extortionate amount of backtracking, there was no way in hell I was going for it. Now here's an example of what I mean, of the camera suddenly being flung to kind of face behind you, and what you really desperately want to be doing is facing in front of you. It's not a... well, it is quite a major problem, but it is one that you can learn to deal with. And at least that is the case, because I have played games before where they expect you to try and come to grips with stuff that you're never going to get over no matter how hard you try. And this is actually the end of the level, and our first instance of destroy the things that are creating a horrendous storm. It's a bit of a pain, especially considering there are these horrendous enemies about. They're one of the more challenging enemies that you will face throughout your time with Rodea. I'm just going to ignore them for now, because why the hell would I face them down if I don't actually need to? Because our goal here is to destroy the sandstorm generators. And that is all you need to do. You don't need to bother trying to defeat every single enemy here. Obviously doing so will get you gravitons, but the risk you kind of face doing so, to be honest, simply isn't worth it. Also, that is an interesting typographical glitch there, Rodea the Sky Soldier. Not sure quite what you were doing there, NIS. I think somebody got a little bit drunk in the localization process. But, oh well. Now, I would say this area is probably a little bit too big and a little bit too hard to see around, but it's stuff like this that gives Rodea a bit of variety in its gameplay. Or at least in its level design. It didn't necessarily wholly need it, because the core gameplay concept is really fun to begin with, and I would probably just quite happily play quite a few hours of just kind of flying from location to location. But having this sort of idea here means that you do explore, I guess. But as I believe may be the case, destroying those finishes the mission, I think. As yes, I am correct. There are a few instances throughout the game where performing a certain action will finish the mission. And if you want to collect everything, don't do that. So, in those situations, if you want to collect everything, make sure that you've explored every single nook and cranny before kind of destroying the final object.
Wait, why can't we just do it here?
Just go with it, will you?
Oh dear, Olmi. Little bit, dramatic, aren't we? Still, either way, might as well indulge him. What's wrong with that? See you in Chapter 7.